Hello, Phil here from Wings of Pegasus, and welcome to another analysis video. On the agenda tonight, we have Glen Campbell, and I got a lot of requests to look at this video, so here it is. And it's going to be Glen playing the William Tell overture. So we're going to have a little look at this all the way through, and then I'm going to point out a few things at the end, with some timestamps as well, so you guys can look back in the video and see the techniques in action. But there's so much going on here that I'm just going to be pointing a few things out at the end. But let's get Glen up on screen and see how he gets on. And there we go, a standing ovation, quite rightly, after that performance. And there is so much going on within that 3 minutes or 2 minutes 55 that I'm going to start breaking things down a little bit. And there's so much to look at. Right from the beginning of the performance, blink and you'll miss it. Glen plays that initial line once and then has a really quick adjustment of the volume on the guitar. And this is probably because he might have been on 8 and he wanted as much tone as he could get, so just whipped it up to 10. But it was such a quick transition between playing and adjusting that volume. Rewind it, have a little look at that, because if you're just looking at Glen, you won't even notice it. It was that quick. So straight away, great professionalism to not get put off by that and just use a beat to get down, turn that volume up and get back into the playing, and seamlessly back into the playing as well. And by the way, this is on a 12-string guitar. Playing this on a 6-string would be tough. Playing it on a 12-string is pretty much outrageous. The way that Glen's playing this, you'll know if you do play 12-string guitars that alternate picking like Glen does here is going to be really difficult. If you don't play guitar, a 12-string guitar has 2 strings next to each other really closely. So one's tuned an octave above the other, so you get that fuller sound. Obviously you get double the amount of strings, so it's a lot fuller sound and you get the octave higher. But so every time that Glen is holding down a note, he's actually holding down 2 strings, and it is so easy to get that pick caught between strings. So the fact that Glen can control it so well is really impressive. You don't really get to appreciate it, especially with a footage that isn't that clear. You can't see the two strings. You'll only see that kind of thing in high definition with footage nowadays. But those two strings being so close together and being able to alternate pick, you don't see this much on a 12 string. Another thing, when he starts the track, a lot of fast playing with the alternate picking, but when he does spend a little bit more time on one note, he gives it a little bit of vibrato. Again, he's holding down two strings at once here, and just supplying vibrato on the two strings is obviously going to be more difficult than just doing it on one on a 6 string. But just the fact that he is that switched on that he wants the guitar to sing all the time. He's not letting any of these notes just sit there with nothing on it. He just gives a little bit of vibrato, a little bit of personality. And at 1 minute 06, he throws in a really cool extemporized run, which I haven't seen in other videos, but it's in this one. So it might be one of those ones that if he feels like throwing it in there, then he does. But again, really great technical playing in order to get the clarity and to make all of those notes count with that alternate picking. Another thing in the video is when we get to about 1 minute 48, so rewind it, have a little look, you'll see that Glen changes that thumb position from over the top of the guitar to then when he needs to get a stretch into that classical position of behind the neck. And you'll see it pop on top and then pop back behind as well to then allow those notes to be reached effectively. I actually mentioned this as well in my Tommy Emmanuel video where you see the thumb come over the top and then behind in that classical position as well. And Glen's one of those guys who wasn't classically trained. He didn't read music. So the way that he learned to play was his own way. And he just picks all the techniques from wherever he sees it, wherever he learns it from, and sticks those all together. And by doing that, it means that he's now got pretty much all the techniques from all the different styles and genres that he can now throw together. I've always said about country playing that all the hard rock and metal techniques are in there. Guys that play guitar in really heavy bands, if they haven't watched the country players, they need to get on it and see that these guys were doing this so early on, before distortion, and like here on a 12-string guitar. And in 1 minute 49 in this video, Glen does some really cool barring, which when you're playing chords, that's fine, but when you're playing lead guitar, it can get a little bit tricky, especially on 12-string. But normally when you're playing lead guitar, you can use your first finger, then put down your third finger, and put down your first finger again, and you alternate between the fingers, and it's a lot more natural in order to do that. Whereas when you start barring strings and then still playing them in a little roll, you can actually apply pressure to one note and then roll your finger over to another note so that you don't get that chord sound of two strings ringing together. In this case, it would be 4 strings ringing together, but you could roll that finger over the fretboard in order just to have pressure on one note and then roll it over to the next note while still effectively having a bar position. Again, one of those things, if you don't play guitar, you won't really be aware of it because he just pulls it off so effortlessly. But it is a really advanced technique. It's one of those techniques that you'll see in sweeping a lot. At 1:59, there's an amazing slide run that Glen throws together, reminiscent of Django Reinhardt, who I did a video on recently as well, where Django would slide over strings rather than playing it with the fingers because he only played with his first 2 fingers on his lead playing. So Glen here is sliding and playing the runs, picking out those slides with that alternate picking, perfectly synchronizing it with his right hand. So again, rewind it, have a little listen. A lot of these techniques, blink and you will miss them because this is all so fast. And finally, just a point about the alternate picking. At 2 minutes 26 it comes in here. And I mean, there's so much technique in here. I could probably analyze this video for another year, just looking at how literally every few seconds we've got something technically really impressive going on. But at 2 minutes 26 here, we get a great shot of the alternate picking that Glen's throwing together, mostly because he's got the guitar on his head. As if playing a 12-string isn't difficult enough, he's then put it on his head just to show how amazing his technique is. But we get a great shot of that right hand just going through that alternate picking, just really synchronizing it with the left hand. Another thing I say about playing shapes, and even more so here with Glen, one of those guys that wasn't classically trained and might not know loads and loads of different scales, he probably played in shapes, and that's what you can tell here with the guitar in his head. You can see that his left hand isn't going up and down the fretboard, he's just going up and down his particular shape that he needs at that time and that particular scale. And you can work out scales into shapes so they're a lot easier to navigate, and that's what Glen's doing with the guitar on his head. He's sticking to that particular shape and just working it up and down, but still getting that alternate picking absolutely spot on. What a great performance from Glen. I could probably break this down for a couple of years because there's so much in there, but I just wanted to point out a few things so that if you want to, you can look back through the video and see the points at which Glen introduces these techniques and how he's just all over it throughout this whole performance. But thank you so much for all the suggestions to watch this video. Let me know what you guys think and keep those suggestions coming in the comments below. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe, and I'll see you guys at the next one. Rock!